heartland of America and the gateway to the West. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie. Welcome to Coast AM. Next hour, The Greatest Deception with Patrick Cook. Should be one of those classic Coast to Coast shows. Well, get ready. Thanksgiving pretty soon, in a few hours. A lot of people get up really early and start cooking. Some people are probably cooking right now, aren't you? Tragedy in India. Mumbai, India's financial capital, a city under siege on Thursday as authorities struggled to regain order after teams of gunmen launched a wave of deadly nighttime attacks on several sites popular with Westerners. The group behind the attacks reportedly singled out Americans and Britons as targets, running up and down the various spots that they overtook, yelling, "Are you an American? Are you from Britain?" It wasn't immediately clear whether U.S. citizens were among the dead, who numbered now at least 101, 200-plus people injured in the attacks. Many of the hostages in these various locations have been released. Federal authorities are now warning law enforcement personnel of a possible terror plot against New York City's subway system and train systems during the holiday season. Police are beefing up security in preparation. An internal memo obtained by the Associated Press says the FBI has received a plausible but unsubstantiated report that al-Qaeda terrorists in late September may have discussed attacking the subway system. The 2008 Atlantic hurricane season, which ends on Sunday, appears to have attained Olympian heights, setting at least 5 weather records in the United States and Cuba. Data on the death and damage are still being calculated. 3 records showed the hurricane season's relentlessness: 6 consecutive named storms. Dolly, Eduard, Faye, Gustav, Hannah, and Ike struck the United States mainland, something that had not been seen in recorded history. It's also the first time major hurricane, those with winds of at least 111 miles an hour, formed in 5 consecutive months, July through November, and Bertha spun for about 17 days, making it the longest-lived storm in July. 2 records involve storms hitting the same places repeatedly. Rain-heavy Faye was the only storm to hit the same state, Florida, 4 times, leaving heavy flood damage in its wake. A record 3 major hurricanes smacked Cuba: Gustav, Ike, and Paloma. Astronomers looking at the spectacular supersonic plumes of gas and dust shooting off of one of Saturn's moons say there are strong hints of liquid water, which, of course, is a key building block of life. Their research, appearing in Thursday's issue of the journal Nature, adds to the growing push to explore further the moon, Enceladus, as one of the solar system's most compelling places for potential life. And what would a Thanksgiving Eve be without the head of the EnterpriseMission.com, Richard C. Hoagland? Hey, Richard, how are you?
Good evening, George, and happy Thanksgiving.
You too, to Robin as well. How did your speech go in Scottsdale?
We both had a terrific time. Chet Snow put on a heck of a party this time, and what was really encouraging to me is, mainly I think due to you, the conference attendance was actually greater than last year.
Excellent.
People kept coming in all weekend and signing up and sitting in seminars and workshops, and it was so nice to see hope for the future triumphing over fear of the current economy.
Richard, a couple things I want to talk with you about this Thanksgiving Eve. First of all, water on Enceladus. Of course, that does not come as anything as a surprise to you.
Well, we've been watching this story now, looking at the burgeoning places where NASA's finding water, really liquid water in the solar system. And, of course, without water, you don't have life, at least the life that, is you and me and everybody listening. So you kind of look at the places where water hangs out. Enceladus is a really tiny moon. It's an ice ball about the size of Connecticut, about 300 miles across. Orbits Saturn pretty close in. And the Cassini mission, which has been there since 2004, has gathered some increasingly interesting data that at the southern pole of this moon, which of course is rotating and orbiting around Saturn, there are these amazing plumes jetting out into space at over 1,300 miles per hour, supersonic plumes. And the question has been, where are they coming from? I mean, this moon is so tiny that in the billions of years since the formation of the solar system, that ice ball should have been frozen stone solid, and yet there's something going on inside.
Yeah.
And now the scientists have kind of converged their models, and they believe, based on the last flyby in particular, which dove through the plumes just a few miles above the surface and actually sampled some of this stuff coming up from inside Enceladus, they believe it's from a liquid ocean underneath the ice, just like Europa, just like we wrote about decades ago. And I believe they've actually detected organics in those plumes with the mass spectrometer on board Cassini. So there could be living little guys, little microbial beasties in those oceans underneath that ice, which, of course, would open up extraordinary possibilities for the prevalence of life all over, not just the solar system, but the galaxy, the universe. George, I think the next several years are going to be the most amazing in the modern history of mankind in terms of finding out for sure what some of these ideas are really all about.
I think it'll be exciting. What else is new on your plate, Richard?
Well, it's funny. And CNN has been doing a series this week. Miles O'Brien, the CNN science guy, has been doing a series called In Search of Aliens. If you get up at the crack of dawn, you're part of the drive time crew that goes to work at the crack of dawn. Before you leave the house, turn on CNN, and you'll see this very well-done series looking for ETs and extraterrestrial life and all that. Well, on Friday, the day following Thanksgiving, they're doing the segment on, get this, fossils found by the Opportunity rover on Mars.
I love it.
Now, Art and I discussed our discovery of a crinoid fossil in imagery sent back in 2004 by Opportunity 4 years ago. Yet nobody, including Miles O'Brien at CNN, picked up the phone and called us, which I'm kind of curious about. So you might want to check that out, everyone. And, of course, you can go to the EnterpriseMission.com website and just scroll down toward the bottom, and you'll see the curious case of the NASA crinoid cover-up, which is our discussion and layout of the imagery of this fossil, which not only did NASA image 4 years ago, but they then ground it into dust with the grinder on the Opportunity rover. So I'll be very curious to see what Miles has to say about all this.
Hey, by the way, I've been getting emails from people who wanted us to post your speech of the Secrets Conference up there on our website. We can't do that. That's proprietary. Is it available anywhere?
Funny you should ask, George. It's called The Hyperdimensional Election of Barack Obama in 2012, and we're rushing the DVD master to Film Baby up in the northwestern part of the United States. So by the time that the next couple of days roll around, we'll be cranking out copies, and if people want to order it for Christmas, it makes a great Christmas present, because it basically is an analysis of how I was able to predict, among other things, that Barack Obama was going to be elected, and the fact that because of that, I'm going to be hosting Coast next year.
You did win that bet with me.
And this is how I did it, the background of the physics, and some prognostications of what this administration could be giving us, which includes potentially actually owning up now on the NASA cover-up of ruins on the Moon and Mars. And if people want to, order it by phone, if they don't have a computer, you simply call an 800 number, 1-877-345-6222. That's 1-877-345-6222. Or with computers, you can go to the EnterpriseMission.com website, and it's right on the top. And let me wish everyone a most important and thankful Thanksgiving, because I have a feeling that looking back, we're going to be very thankful for where we are tomorrow night.
Richard C. Hoagland. Thanks, Richard. You have a great Thanksgiving, Robin, as well. By the way, Sunday night, Art Bell will host the program, and his guest will be physicist Michio Kaku. So make sure you're part of that program. Sunday night, Art Bell going to do the show. A rare East Asian turtle, one of just 4 believed to be left in the world, that's it, just 4, was swept away by a flood in Vietnam, taken hostage by an enterprising fisherman, and nearly ended up in a soup pot. Instead, though, The 150-pound animal returned to its lake on Wednesday, and conservationists celebrated their deal with the fishermen, the turtle's freedom, in exchange for about $200 and 2 new fishing nets. How about that? Well, speaking of food, up next, Susan Smith-Jones joins us. We talk about food. We're going to talk about what you're cooking tomorrow and Thanksgiving Day, and just what that means to you. That's all next on Coast to Coast AM. All right, Dr. Susan Smith-Jones, Ph.D., has assisted thousands of people in becoming more aware of how their food and lifestyle choices affect their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. For 30 years, Susan taught students, staff, and faculty at UCLA how to be healthy and fit. She's an author and motivational speaker and has assisted many people with their food and lifestyle choices. Here she is this hour on Coast to Coast. Happy Thanksgiving, Susan.
Well, George, I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be than with you. Thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. Now, everything that you do with regards to food and becoming more aware of lifestyle, do you get a little strange during Thanksgiving? I mean, do you go to parties and look at everything that they're cooking and eating?
Well, I do. I do. I go to different people's homes, and I help them before their big event to make meals, because I've been a culinary instructor for 25 years. And then I enjoy the food, too. I'm not a fanatic about what I eat, but for the most part, I eat a pretty clean and healthy diet.
Let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did this all start for you? How did you get into health?
Well, I'll tell you exactly when it began. I had just turned 17, and my dad suddenly died.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. And I coped with it, really, by not coping at all. And as a result, the year after he died, I stuffed all of my feelings, and I ate and ate and ate. So I gained lots of weight that year, developed terrible acne, had awful allergies and sinus problems. I absolutely was a wreck, and I'd always carry around lots of tissues to wipe my runny eyes and nose, and deal with the sneezing, and take care of all the mucus I was coughing up. Probably not what I shouldn't talk about that, but it was not a pretty picture. And my grandmother, George, her name was Fritzie. Fritzie? Fritzie. She was from Denmark. And she took me to the doctors, and he said that I had terrible allergies, that I would have them for the rest of my life, and he said that all he could do was give me some prescription medications. So when I left his office, my grandmother was driving, and she knew I was depressed and powerless. And instead of taking me to the pharmacy to fill the prescriptions, she drove me to her home, and she had a heart-to-heart talk with me. And, George, she told me that if I followed her guidance and her suggestions 100%, she guaranteed that my allergies and sinus problems would go away in 30 days, that my entire life would profoundly change for the better, my acne would clear up, my energy would soar, the extra weight I was carrying would fall away, and my attitude would change from negative and powerless to positive and hopeful. So, needless to say, she had my attention, and for the next several hours and days, and George, what ended up being 7 years before she died, she taught me everything she knew about health practices and natural home remedies, and they all worked beautifully, and they were simple and inexpensive. So that well-known adage that when a student is ready, the teacher will appear, it was definitely true for me, because I was ready, and she changed my life for the better. And she taught me about things like the healing power of beautiful, colorful foods, and the importance of spending time in nature. And she loved the Essene philosophy. She taught me about that, and deep breathing and visualization and prayer and meditation. And basically, she taught me how to take care of my body from head to toe, things like nasal cleansing and dry skin brushing and slanting, even fasting. But she told me that if I take really good care of myself, then my body would take care of me. So my grandmother, bottom line here is my grandmother went from being someone who really used to be so strange and weird to me with her health nut approach to life, to being my greatest mentor and the person who changed my life for the better. And everything she taught me in those years before she passed away are some of the greatest blessings and lessons in my life that I still teach to this day. So from her loving guidance, I chose my career, and my passion for alternative health and holistic health was born. And here's the greatest thing, and because of her teachings, I've never taken any prescription medication in my life because I choose to live close to nature.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
You know, so many people, I've always recommended that if they're on any kind of medication that, you know, it's between them and their doctor.
Absolutely.
Of course, you know, and far be it for any of us to tell them, stop taking your medicine. But, you know, you were able to do this on your own, and that's remarkable. And you try to teach other people the ability to do it. And when you do it, Susan, you do feel better. You feel more energized. And when your body's energized, you do different things. I mean, you have a power about you when you're energized that you can, even in a dream state, no matter what you do, you can do positive things, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. When you are vibrantly healthy in body, mind, and spirit, and I think the body reflects the mind and the mind reflects the spirit, so the physical body is a great place to start. But when you feel vibrantly healthy and you get enough sleep and drink enough water and have the positive attitude, keep your stress level down, eat the good foods, all the things we'll talk about, then you are in touch with that empowered presence inside you, and everything affects everything else. For example, when you go out and let's say you go hiking or walking, that's going to give you a more positive attitude. And when you eat good foods, then you have a better positive attitude. And yet, moreover, you could eat the best foods all day and you could exercise for hours. But if your thoughts are continually negative, if you're always harboring thoughts of doubt and worry and envy and hopelessness, helplessness, there's no way you're going to be vibrantly healthy. My grandmother taught me that our bodies were created to be self-healing, self-rejuvenating, and self-renewing. But we've got to take care of our own bodies and treat them with tender, loving care and support our body's own inherent natural healing systems rather than working against them. And what I say to people all the time is your level of health right this moment is a result of the countless choices you have made regarding food you eat, thoughts you think, what you believe, what you expect, the exercise you get, simply how you're choosing to live your life. And where this choice-making begins, I believe, is with appreciating and respecting and loving your magnificent body. Because one of the most important things we can all learn in life is a sense of appreciation for ourselves. Because when we open our hearts to our own self-worth and then that divine essence of all humanity, we access the most powerful healer of all, and the healing power of love, or whatever you want to call it. I went to school for many years, spent many years at the graduate level, and most of that time, George, I studied the human body. And the more I studied it, the more I was in awe and amazed at how beautifully it is designed. And I want to mention this now because this is a great time of year. And if anybody out there is listening and thinking you have nothing to be grateful for, you just look at how miraculous your body is in terms of a really simplistic scientific analysis. Your body could be regarded as being about 3/4 water, some carbon and calcium and a few other chemicals. But just as any of you right now are sitting, standing, resting in bed, your body is performing amazing feats of engineering, chemistry, physics, and communication that nothing humanly designed could ever duplicate. And what's more, your body improves with use, because the more good stress you put on your body through a regular fitness program, the stronger your bones and muscles will become, the more efficiently your body functions. So clearly, our bodies deserve reverence.
And that also creates an active mind too, doesn't it? When you take care of yourself.
Active and positive and hopeful, rather than feeling powerless and hopeless. Because when you have those negative feelings, that instantly suppresses your immune system. There was a wonderful study done at Harvard. It was the Mother Teresa effect. You've probably heard about this. But they took a group of people and tested their immune function, by looking at their saliva and their white blood cell count. And then they took that group and they showed them First of all, they showed them a nightly news 30-minute broadcast. And even if you think, if you think you're positive and things don't affect you, it's hard not to be affected by what's on the news. And they found everybody across the board had a suppressed immune system. So I recommend that probably don't watch the nightly news before you go to sleep. But then they showed everybody a documentary on the work of Mother Teresa. And then after that, and even though some of the people in the group didn't even believe in the work she was doing, but everybody across the board had a heightened and better functioning immune system.
Yeah, they felt better about themselves. Stay with us. Susan Smith-Jones, our special guest this hour. We're going to open up the phone lines, too. She's also going to talk about stress busters. That's always good to know, and this time we'll be back. Well, next hour, Patrick Cook joins us. We're going to talk a little bit about the theories of Eric von Däniken, his belief in extraterrestrial presence, visitations. As you know, his prominent book, Chariot of the Gods. We'll be back in a moment as we continue talking with Susan Smith-Jones about food and health and nutrition and your phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie with Susan Smith-Jones. We're going to take your phone calls in just a moment. Susan, this is a day and age now where everybody's concerned about the economy, their jobs, their money. It's a stress time. You've got some favorite stress busters for people.
I do. And, you know, who doesn't feel stress these days? 2/3 of doctor visits are all due to stress-related ailments. And
jeez.
I know 80 to 90% of all diseases are stress-related. And if you're female out there listening, stress is even more important because study after study has found that women suffer from both stress and depression more often than men. And before I tell you, George, what I think causes people the most stress, what causes you stress?
When a guest doesn't become ready, when they're not there, when the phone dies, that's stress. No, I don't have much stress, Susan. You know, I let things go off me pretty easily.
Yeah, you've got the right attitude. I know my grandmother always used to say, attitude is the mind's paintbrush. It can color anything. Well, I know where I've been lately in Southern California, stress might be caused by fires or mudslides or earthquakes or for some people bumper-to-bumper traffic and, like you said, unpaid bills or even constant noise. But it also can be triggered by anger and fear, worry, grief, depression, and guilt. And when you're under lots of stress, George, you wouldn't know this, but for other people who are under chronic stress, it leads to high blood pressure, heart problems, fatigue, weight gain for sure, muscle and joint pain, headaches, and other illnesses. But there are things that you can do. There are a variety of things that you can do. First of all, you can start out by eating a better diet. 8 of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States are directly related to diet. And, you know, in a way, that should be a comforting feeling because nobody shoves the food down your throat. We decide what we should eat. And my grandmother always used to say that you always want to look to nature for what to eat. And so she would say, honey, she called me Sonny. That was my nickname because I'm always positive and optimistic. She said, remember, we won't find ice cream trees and potato chip bushes or donut vines, but the more naturally colorful your meal is, the more likely it is to have an abundance of nutrients that boost immunity and protect your body from disease. And here's a great way to think about nutritious food. Produce is the most important health care that your money can buy. And you can choose to eat delectable foods that just happen to be potent medicines that heal the body and help restore vibrant health. But the sad fact is that many people make the wrong choices every day by consuming foods that were never intended for our miraculous bodies. So the bottom line is when you choose food, whether it's a holiday time or any time of the year, you want to go for color. You want to eat a rainbow diet.
Really?
Yeah, the more color. Now, I'm not talking about artificial colors, but
right.
The more color in the foods that you eat, the more nutrients you're going to get in your body. And, for example, let's just take fruits and vegetables. Most of the nutrients are in the color of the fruit and vegetable. So when you eat those, you take that into your system, and it concentrates on the inside. to protect your body and skin. So the more color you have, the better off your health and your skin will be. And can I go through a few foods that everyone should have in their kitchen?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll go to the calls.
All right. And pumpkin, all right? Lots of people are eating pumpkin now, whether it's fresh roasted pumpkin or in the can or pumpkin pie. That gives a rosy glow to the skin and actually prevents wrinkles because of the phytonutrients. Let's talk about spinach. Popeye knew what he was talking about. Eating lots of spinach, George, gives you the best chance of living your entire life with good vision. And in fact, all of those leafy greens. I read a review of 206 human, not animal, but human epidemiological studies a couple of months ago, and it showed that green vegetables had the strongest protective effect against cancer, heart disease, arthritis, diabetes, obesity, and high blood pressure than all other foods, and yet only 1 in 500 Americans consumes enough calories from vegetables to assure this defense. So eat lots of vegetables, and if I had to pick one that was the very, very best, it would be broccoli. And I know Tom likes broccoli.
Tom loves it. I mean, he's a fanatic when it comes to that.
And isn't that great? Because he's going to live to a ripe old age and be healthy. It is 40% protein. It cuts the risk of cancer in half. And, George, you only need 1/4 of a cup per day to get the anti-cancer effects of broccoli. But broccoli sprouts are 100 times better than regular broccoli. Most people don't realize that the seeds are where all the anti-cancer nutrients are located. And you can grow them really inexpensively in your kitchen. You can get them at the market or the natural food store, but I always have a variety of sprouts growing in my kitchen.
I also take supplements, broccoli supplements, pharmaceutical grade. Is that pretty good?
Perfect. No, that's great. I think you always do best by eating the food. That should be the first way to get your nutrients.
Right.
There are many as yet discovered nutrients, but when, it's always good to fill in the gap by taking some supplements. If you want to keep your brain young your entire life with great focus and memory and concentration, good for you too, doing radio, you want to eat lots of berries. And the best berry for your brain is the blueberry.
The blueberry, right.
Yeah. And then also, we all know tomatoes are great because they have lycopene. That's the phytonutrient which promotes healthy skin and fights prostate cancer. But tomatoes are the best food on the planet to prevent prostate cancer. And remember, because most of the nutrients are in the skin, choose cherry tomatoes over big tomatoes whenever you can, because pound per pound, they're higher in antioxidants because they have a thick skin. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay,
you can
that's good
hardly
to know.
get any better fast food snack than just eating cherry tomatoes.
Absolutely. Let's take a few calls here. They're lining up for you, Susan.
Oh, boy.
Let's go to Winnipeg, Canada. Brian, first-time caller. Hi, Brian.
Hi, your body is your temple. If you don't take care of it, you're going to be in big trouble. It's it's not what you eat, it's the amount you eat of each thing. I have a food blender, and I throw ginseng in it, and I throw carrots in it, and what a knockout. This is a fantastic feel. But the best drink I have is I throw 3 berries into a blender with a couple ice cubes. Talk about a smoothie. No sugar, no nothing. It's knockout. It's fantastic.
Isn't that great? And, Brian, you sound so enthusiastic. I can tell that your diet suits you as well.
I'm 67 years old, and I drive all night for the post office.
What an inspiration you are.
Yeah, I just came back to St. Louis, 2 months in St. Louis on vacation.
That great?
Yeah.
But Brian, I'm a big believer in blending, whether it's a snack or maybe a meal, you can blend some things, because the blender does lots of the digestion, takes off some of the stress on your digestive system. And I recommend that when you make blended drinks, sometimes put in some leaves of romaine lettuce or spinach or a little cucumber. It makes it a beautiful green color, but you don't even taste the vegetables. For example, this morning, you can use a base of, I use tea, or you can use water or juice or milk, whatever you use, but I often use tea because I don't need the extra calories, and whatever tea that I want herbally that will help my body. I put in 1 pear, I put in about 6 leaves of romaine lettuce, I put in 2 dates to give it a little bit of sweetener, and I always put in cinnamon, because cinnamon, I know, George, you like turmeric. Cinnamon, like
Yes.
turmeric, is a great anti-inflammatory. It's anti-aging, and it also helps your body utilize blood sugar. So I'm putting cinnamon on everything. I put it in my smoothies. I put in a few flax seeds. Flax seeds are rich in fiber, omega-3, fatty acids, and they have lignans, the fiber that helps prevent breast cancer. I blend that up, and I drink it throughout the day. It's terrific. Hey,
I hear that flaxseed oil is even better than omega fish oil. Is that true?
you know, I think it actually is, but you want to get a good quality of flax oil, and 1 to 2 tablespoons a day is terrific in your body. It boosts your immune system, but here's something most people don't know about it. 3 to 4 hours after taking flaxseed oil or freshly ground flaxseed in a glass of juice or water, 3 to 4 hours later, you can feel a calmness in your body. It literally harmonizes all of the chemicals in your body and the hormones, balances things out. So if you feel anxious or stressed out, when you take that flax oil or the ground seeds in, you'll feel calmer very shortly. But one more thing about cinnamon. I've done this for 30 years, and I love sharing this with people, and I know there'll be none left on the shelves tomorrow. But go get cinnamon sticks, because cinnamon is anti-aging and anti-inflammatory, helps you to utilize your blood sugar. You take a cinnamon stick, George, and you put it in your glass of water or a bottle of water, and you can use the same stick, transfer it from glass to glass or bottle to bottle, and you know how it's tightly wound up, you know, the cinnamon stick? And in about 2 days in the liquid, it will open up, and then you throw it away, or I put it down into my garden, and you get a faint fragrance of cinnamon in the water. So those people that have a hard time drinking enough water because you don't like how it tastes, you'll love the cinnamon water, and it is so good for you.
Mike in Fresno, California, west of the Rockies. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, George. Sonny.
Hey, Mike.
Sonny, that's a very special name. I've named 2 of my very significant others, Sonny.
You have 2 significant others?
Yeah, it's very special people to me. Actually, they're the latest 2 were 2 puppies that were born in front of me. I named one Sonny, one Cloudy.
That's great.
Susan, I'm an RN. I've been very interested in holistic health, being American Indian. A lot of the things you talk about, I realized I used to love those things as kids. Watermelon, blueberries. But I'm kind of faced with some issues here. I'm getting ready to go back to work. My choice is working a 12-hour shift, days or nights. Have some joint. I've been a long-term athlete. My knees are kind of thin. Do you feel I can overcome that? Sometimes I feel better if I'm on my feet. What do you think? What's the optimal work week? Should we work 12s? Can I overcome the long hours if I take care of myself?
Well, first of all, Mike, I believe that you can overcome everything. It all begins in your mind, so that's number one. You need to be positive about that. But you also don't want to overwork. If we have time, I want to talk about the importance of sleep. You need to drink enough water, and you need to drink water that's high in alkalinity, usually around 9.5, because that will help your body to stay healthy, boost your immune system, and take away some of those aches and pains. And you need to also make sleep a non-negotiable practice. Sleep, with a lack of sleep, Mike, undermines your body's ability to deal with any stress. And when you sleep at night, that's when your body rebuilds, renews, and rejuvenates itself. And if you don't get enough sleep, what happens is you become more stressed out. It raises your cortisol level. It makes you gain weight. And research shows that when you skimp on sleep, it interferes with your body's ability to process carbs, and that leads to elevated blood sugar levels and then an increased tendency to store calories as fat. So you want to get sleep, you want to drink water, you want to eat a diet that's rich in lots of colorful foods. And here are a couple more key points. Every morning, Mike, when you wake up, the first 40 minutes of the day sets the tone for the day. So you want to make your morning time as positive and joyful as possible. So maybe the night before you get the breakfast table set, you get lunches made, you get your animals' food ready, or you get your clothes laid out, so that you won't feel rushed and pressured and stressed out in the morning, because that's important to carry that calmness with you throughout the day. And take breaks every hour when you're awake, not when you're sleeping, and take 1 to 2 minutes just to do deep breathing. That calms you, boosts your immunity, reduces stress, and actually keeps you more focused on your work.
I put in 12-hour days, Susan, most of the time, and I tell you, once you get used to it, it's energizing by itself. The program's 4 hours, and I do about 8 hours of prep during the day. So, I put in those 12 hours. Yeah, Los Angeles is a little more intense than St. Louis as I go back and forth. But I have found that, the 12-hour days don't hurt you at all.
No, and, here's the key for you, George. You love what you do, and you're great at what you do. So when you love what you do, that energizes you. 80% of the people in this country don't like their job, but they go to it because they need to.
They have to.
Yeah, so I say either change your attitude about your job or try to get a different job, because that can depress you and create even more stress. And if anybody out there wants to look younger, really make sure you drink more water, because and most of the time when people, George, think that they're hungry, they're actually thirsty. And water is a great appetite suppressant. About 15 to 20 minutes before a meal on an empty stomach, drink a big glass of water. It will help make it so you won't overeat at the table. And lack of moisture in our faces creates wrinkles, the way lack of moisture in grapes creates raisins, or plums create prunes.
Prune look, yeah.
Prune, yeah. Or that old dried apple look.
Let's go to Jackie, east of the Rockies in Illinois. Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you. Ma'am, I have a question. I'll take your answer off the air.
Okay.
2 years ago, I was diagnosed with having type 2 diabetes. With the job that I have, I get up like at 3:30 in the morning, be at work at 4, get off at 8, and I take like 3 different types of diabetes medicine. And I am so tired when I get home from working that I completely forget to take it. Is there anything that I can take to remember without having to use the medication to lower
You mean to boost your memory, to help? Well, first of all, write little reminders and put them on your purse or on your computer or on your refrigerator or kitchen cupboard. That's number one. When you don't get enough sleep at night, Jackie, it's hard to have strong thinking and powerful thinking throughout the day, so make sure you get enough sleep.
Susan, and doesn't losing weight, doesn't that dramatically lower blood glucose levels?
Oh, absolutely dramatically. So, but Jackie, she didn't say if she was overweight. You also want to stay away from any foods made with white sugar and white flour. You want to eat foods that are complex carbohydrates and lean protein. Beans are great if you're diabetic. You want to get the cinnamon in. You want to eat lots of vegetables and, of course, drink lots of water. George, did she say if she was overweight?
Let's see. She should be there. Jackie, are you overweight? Jackie has departed.
Okay.
Jackie has left the building. But don't you find most people with type 2 diabetes probably a little heavier than they should be?
Yes, they are, and also they don't exercise enough. So even though she's busy all day, I bet, I'm just guessing, she probably goes to work and sits at a desk. But there are things that you could do at work. You can take the stairs instead of the elevator. You can park farther away in the parking lot, or during your lunch break, instead of taking a donut and coffee break, take a walking break. There's so many things you can do.
Sure. Gabriel Cousins claims you can reduce your blood glucose levels dramatically in 30 days if you go on the right program. Susan,
he's absolutely right. Yeah. He's my dear friend. I love Gabriel.
He's a good guy. Get your website out for us, please.
My website is SusanSmithJones.com.
That's simple enough.
My name.
Susan, have a great Thanksgiving. Eric von Daniken is 73 years old, controversial Swiss author, best known for his books which present claims for evidence of extraterrestrial influences on human culture, most prominently Chariots of the Gods, where he believes that ancient astronauts visited this planet and might have been interpreted as gods. In a moment, Patrick Cook joins us with his theories. The Greatest Deception, next on Coast to Coast AM. Patrick Cook is an author, publisher, theologian, and independent researcher. His main work, the Bible UFO Connection website, is one of the most comprehensive databases on UFO research, exotheology, the paranormal, human destiny, end times prophecy on the internet. It's going to be a classic night on Coast to Coast. Patrick, how are you?
I'm fine, George, and thank you very much for inviting me to be on Coast to Coast, and I'd like to wish you and the listeners a very abundant and joyful Thanksgiving.
You too, Patrick. Thank you. That's very, very kind of you. Since I was a kid, I've been just fascinated with the work of Eric von Daniken, and you seem to have looked into his work quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think? What'd you think of what he has done?
Well, I have the greatest respect for Eric von Daniken and credit him with breaking the ground on the amazing disclosure of our past. We only disagree on what these beings are, but in sync on almost every other aspect of our research. I have not used any of his research in my work, but he broke the ground that I am now walking upon.
Absolutely. Of course, Eric has written books. 26 books have been translated to more than 20 languages, 60 million copies worldwide. He's got a television documentary and some shows out there that have been seen by millions as well. His theories basically say that we have been visited by ancient astronauts from other lands and that they were human beings that were on this planet, saw these beings come down and thought they were gods. And you believe the other way around, indeed. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself, Patrick, beyond just the little bio I read.
Well, I was basically raised from the age of 9 years old to become a Baptist minister in the American Convention. I went to seminary at the age of 15, but unfortunately had doctrinal disagreements with the church and left before I was ordained. I have now spent the last 3 decades researching what has now proven to be a lifelong work. And I have studied comparative theology, exotheology, which of course is the study of alien influences in our religions. I'm an eschatologist, which means I study the end times prophecies of mankind. And it's been an absolutely fascinating ride, I'll tell you that much.
And we're going to tie a lot of this in tonight, Patrick. I too, fascinated with end times prophecy. I haven't done the kind of work and homework on it that you have, but it just is kind of marvelous to interpret, especially with the outcome, depending on how one perceives it.
Yes, definitely.
Now, you have a website out called BibleUFO.com. Pretty comprehensive. It deals a lot with the biblical UFO connection. Well, let's go way back, where you and Von Daniken agree that there was visitation. You just don't agree on what the visitation was and the interpretation of it. Set the stage for me. How far back are we going?
Well, I believe we go back to the beginning of time.
All right.
As I'm, something had to put this planet here. Something had to put it in motion around the sun and what have you. What my belief is that this planet has gone through not just one creation, but several creations. Of course, we see that in the archaeological and geological record, which the church, of course, denies. The Earth has not, the entire creation as we know it, has not been around for just 4,000 or 6,000 years. And the date is 4004 BC. They get it right down to a year. But we see our civilizations going back to at least 12,000. And then we have records. The Egyptians, for instance, when Herodotus visited the priests that were guarding the Great Pyramid, which initially got me interested in this, and that's a fascinating story. He they traced their history back to 11,000 BC, and he asked them what happened before that, and he said, well, we didn't need a priesthood then. The gods were here.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely fascinating. And, of course, we have the Mayans going back millions of years. I believe there's actually, in the book of Jeremiah, a story of a previous creation prior to the one that we see in Genesis 1:1.
Michael Cremo, you're familiar with his work?
I am.
Okay. Truly believes that mankind, civilizations, go back hundreds of millions of years on this planet. And, he might be right there, Patrick. We may have had, indeed, civilizations that have toppled themselves, or something has happened where they have gone extinct. But they may be that old.
Yes.
It's very, very
possible. I agree with that concept.
Do you believe in the concept that we were seeded by beings, or that we were here on the planet? We evolved?
Well, no, I don't believe in evolution. I'm not sure what happened prior to what we know as the creation, but I refer to as the great terraforming. The basic concept is really simple. If this had been just a spoken creation by this omnipotent God that didn't need to do anything at all, but just speak things into creation, why did he list it as 6 days? And, of course, we see in the Bible that 6 days can be like 1,000 years, a day can be like 1,000 years, or there's another place in the Bible where a day can be 6,000 years. But I don't believe that time is really relevant to these beings. So, however it happened, it was a process. And then we see when he made Adam, well, he used something. He made him out of the dust of the earth. And then when he found he was lonely, what did he do? He took a rib from him. He didn't make her out of the dust of the earth. He literally, I believe, cloned Eve from Adam's rib. So we're talking about a highly advanced race of beings that apparently can create biospheres, and according to them, actually put the rock that they created, that biosphere, in motion around a sun that is revolving around in a galaxy which is revolving around in a universe. And there are billions of planets in our galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies. What is that all about?
And there may be many multiverses now, Patrick, so it could be endless,
Oh, yes. Every time, the farther we go out into the universe, the bigger it gets. The farther we can see, the bigger it gets.
Because Genesis is going to be important here tonight in your interpretation, Von Daniken believes that we had humans on this planet and that they witnessed something remarkable. They witnessed beings from another planetary system, perhaps, coming down on this planet, and that the technology was so overwhelming for these human beings at the time that the sightings were just so overwhelming that they saw these people, these creatures, as gods. And for a moment here, before we get into your argument, I can understand how Von Daniken would think that, because if you have a civilization here that is, not highly evolved at all, and they see things come down from above, I guess you would think they were godlike, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. We have to consider the reality here. Arthur C. Clarke stated that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And you just mentioned that Michio Kaku is going to be interviewed on the show in a couple of days.
Yes.
And he was on the Peter Jennings UFO special, and he was discussing how advanced these races are. And he made a profound statement as far as I'm concerned. He said, I'm going to paraphrase it, he said that the way we look at these beings that are piloting the UFOs, he is very, very much a pro-UFO person as far as I'm concerned.
And for a physicist, that's pretty dramatic.
It's amazing. He's a theoretical physicist at, I believe it's New York State University. But the statement that he made was, we look at these beings as being hundreds, if not thousands of years more advanced than we are. What we really need to think about is that these beings could be millions, if not billions of years more advanced than we are.
Absolutely.
And we see, not only in the ancient records and throughout our history, we see these craft that these beings are in perform some amazing things. But they just seem to be hanging out there and watching. They're not really doing anything, but don't try to catch them. And don't, there's a lot of theories about how they appear around weapons, these heavy-duty weapon systems that they're testing. We know that they disabled an entire group of nuclear missiles. But they just seem to be hanging there. But what the record shows from what they have done, and we see these incredible, what are called miracles in the Bible. The Bible is loaded with miracles, and it's absolutely amazing. Not only do they seem to have a very, very highly refined and far advanced technology than we do, but they also seem to have a great deal of personal power that they exhibit as well. So they have not only, if you want to say evolved or advanced, they have not only advanced in technology, they have advanced in their own sense of being, their own reality, and who they are and the power that they possess. So Von Daniken is correct. He is absolutely correct. The people were very much awed by these beings. Now, the reason that we disagree about aliens, I don't disagree that much with him. That's the one thing that we need to set straight here.
Okay, yeah, let's clarify that.
Okay, there are two types of divine beings spoken of in the Bible. The Elohim, which the very first word the very first place where God appears in the Bible is in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That God, that word God is taken from the Hebrew word Elohim, and it is a plural word. It means gods in the particular sense, always used as a plural. The IYM on the end of it makes it plural. Then we have the beings known as the angels, which are called the Malach in the Hebrew. And those beings seem to serve these gods, the Elohim. And if you look at it from a perspective, from one of an easy way for a layman to understand the way this is figured, if you look at the concepts that were in Star Wars, you have the Force, you have the Jedi, you have the Federation. Now, what I believe is it's something along those lines. The Force is the power of these beings. They seem to have they've got it really under control.
They know what it's...
Everything is in balance and everything works just fine. Then you have the Jedi. Now, I believe the Jedi themselves would be considered as the gods themselves. A family of gods is the way I believe it's actually portrayed.
Okay.
And then the Federation that you see in the Star Wars concept, those are the angels. Now, there are no descriptions of any value within the Bible that describe these angels. They are described as being terrible, they're brilliant, they're this, that, and the other thing, but nothing about their general appearance except one time in the New Testament when Jesus was placed in the tomb. After the 3 days, Peter came in and he saw a youth, what he called a youth, or a small person in the tomb, who told him that Jesus was gone. Now, that's the only description we have. They do not have, we don't have descriptions of them having wings, halos, playing harps, long, beautiful blonde hair, and that kind of thing. That doesn't exist. The Bible does not preclude that the angels could be the grays and the blues and the browns and the reptilian type and the mantis type. The Bible does not preclude that. Therefore, it could be that the angels are the aliens that we are seeing that are being reported in close encounters in our modern times.
Interesting. Okay, now, for us to get a better perspective on what we're talking about here today with your theories, tell me what you think the Elohim might be, first and foremost. If they are indeed the gods, explain that a little bit more for us.
Well, God is a generic term, a higher being. there are a lot of, apparently there is a single being at the head of this race of beings, known as the Father. And this is not the God that spoke to Abraham, Isaac, Ezekiel. He is known as the Lord God. He is specific to that. There is an Almighty that is spoken of in the Bible. And apparently, this being has an incredible power to keep things working within the universe. And for some reason, he apparently decided to recreate himself. As we know, Jesus is called his son. Right. Jesus, if you look at John 1, the first chapter of John, you will see him speaking about the Word, that all things were made by the Word, and the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. What he is pointing out is that Jesus Christ was the God of the Old Testament, and his name was Jehovah in the Hebrew.
Right.
And you all, whenever you see the words Lord God together, that is the national God of Israel. He is the one that is speaking to the prophets. He is the one that is always involved with that. And apparently he cycled into a human and then cycled right back out. And he is described by Daniel, who saw him, and John, who saw him in exactly the same way. So apparently he just changed into a human and then changed back into a god.
Okay, now this is not part of the Elohim, you're saying?
Yes, he is. Apparently, this Lord God, Jehovah God, who became Jesus, is the highest-ranking member, the highest-ranking of the family members. Underneath this person in the Hebrew, he's called the Almighty. He's called Pater or Father in the New Testament.
How many of them were there, do you think?
We don't have any idea. It speaks of many gods. It speaks of gods, of the Lord God standing in the council of other gods, but he's the mightiest one. There is no number. There is no number at all. The angels are numbered in the billions, or could be in the billions. It's not sure, but there's a bunch of them out there. I guarantee you that.
How did they get here, Patrick?
They flew here, apparently. It would seem to be that that's what we see. Go ahead.
Not in craft, you're saying?
Yes, I believe they came in craft.
They came in craft. Okay.
Either they come in craft or they live in these crafts.
Okay,
I'm not sure. They don't seem to have a central world.
To me, that sounds physical, then. If they come in craft...
Yeah, absolutely physical.
Okay. All right, so the fact that they have visited us in craft, which then they had to have built, that doesn't sound godlike to me. That sounds like a higher civilization.
Yes.
But it doesn't sound godlike, does it?
No, God, like I say, this term that we use is God. Of course, well, let's look at the God of the church, George. The God of the church is this omnipotent, invisible being that lives in heaven somewhere.
Yeah.
And apparently does most of what he does is inflict his revenge on mankind for one reason or another. He is not well defined within the church. You are not to ask what he looks like or anything like that. But let's be clear here. When he made this man Adam, what did he say? He said, "Let us make man in our image and after our likeness." Now, let's be logical here. If the gods made man to look like the gods, then the gods must look like men.
I would agree with that.
That's the important thing. So you have apparently the thing about the way the church approaches it doesn't have any relation to the Bible. God says very clearly.
All right, hold on, Patrick. We're going to take this real quick break, and then we'll come right back. This is fascinating. Hey, make sure you sign up for the free Coast Zone newsletter. All you have to do is go to coasttocoastam.com. Right there on the homepage, You can just click the link there. You can register and get the free daily email newsletter called Coast Zone. Find out why thousands of people are doing that. And in a few weeks, all of you who are getting the free newsletter, part of Coast Zone, and you Streamlink members as well, you're going to be able to look at the prototype of the new coasttocoastam.com website, which is almost complete, subject to you working out some of the kinks and looking at it and telling us what you think, giving us your feedback. And you'll be able to do that because you're going to be getting that free Coast to Coast, Coast Zone newsletter. So just register for it, Coast Zone, up there at coasttocoastam.com. Patrick, we're going back now to talk about your theories of the visitation here, and you believe they came here in craft, these gods.
Yes.
Okay. And craft that they obviously constructed?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a difference between our perception of the biblical God, okay, the creator, and these gods that visited us? Or are we talking about one and the same?
One and the same.
Okay, all right. With that, let's go on a little bit more with your theory and tell us what you think happened years ago.
Well, the one thing that we were discussing earlier is about the physical nature of this God. And I'm going to read to you a verse out of Exodus 19. It's verse 9. And then the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come to thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee and believe thee forever. He is stating a specific purpose for showing up in whatever this thick cloud is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, the translators, the King James translators, added all of those these in. Now, let me read to you exactly how it read in the original languages. And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak and believe forever. Apparently, he is stating that he is here, and that is why he is using this craft, this thick cloud. The word cloud in this situation comes from the Hebrew word which means scud cloud. Not your big, high, fluffy clouds, but the low clouds that you see scooting below in thunderstorms and things like that. Those low clouds are called scud clouds. Very dark and moving very fast. And that's where that word cloud comes from. But there are all kinds of clouds in the Bible. There are rapidly what we see basically. If you look at now, I have over 1,000 verses laid out in categories such as what these vehicles are, how they're described. There are clouds, thrones, pavilions, pillars, chariots, all kinds of different vehicles that are described.
Do they talk about propulsion at all, Patrick?
Not really, no. Now, we do see propulsion discussed in other writings. Now, I am a comparative theologist. I do not believe that this phenomenon is exclusive to the Hebrews. I cannot see a god or a race of highly advanced race of beings who we think of as the gods, only concentrating on less than 1% of the world's population that dwell on less than 1% of the world's landmass. Therefore, it's a whole. If you look at the similarities, that's what comparative theology is. Well, some comparative theologists look at the dissimilarities between religions being autonomous and not tied to any dogmatic belief. I can look at it the other way, the similarities. And, of course, we see that in a number of the gods around the world. There are saviors. There are virgins. It's amazing the number. There are at least a score of gods who were here from virgin births. That includes the God of the Bible, the God of Egypt, Krishna, Muhammad, the whole 9 yards. It's a complete. Excuse me, Vishnu. I'm sorry, I'm a little lost here. But a number of the gods have similarities between them. What I believe, after going over this for the last 3 decades, is that we are not what we view in the mainstream is that we have a number of different gods, all in a number of different religions. What I believe is that what we have is the same gods being described by different cultures with different traditions, different languages, living in different environments, eating different foods, dressing differently, thinking differently, different social structures, the whole nine yards. So I believe
different perception, everything.
All talking about the same God. They all experience floods. But the most important, getting down to the most important thing, the key to the whole thing is they all say the same thing: love each other.
True.
Take care of each other. And if you do that, everything's fine. But if you don't, things get rough, and we're going to have to come back and pull you out of the hole.
The God portrayed by religion, to me, comes across as very spiritual, kind of mystical. The gods portrayed by you come across as very physical. Piloting craft, for example.
Yes.
Why the difference?
Well, there's no real difference. It's all in the attitude. I'm not saying you, but
I understand.
What the mainstream has been taught is that this God is omnipotent, all-powerful, everything, knows everything that's going on everywhere, all the time, constantly, and that he's just mysterious, he's ethereal, you can't see him, and that's just not the way the Bible portrays it. Moses saw God, Job saw God, Ezekiel saw God, Daniel saw God. He has a physical presence, and of course, he stated in the verse that I just quoted, he states very clearly that he comes in a thick cloud.
Okay, you don't think, though, that there could be distinctive visitors, ET visitors to the planet from other planetary systems, and we could have this omnipotent God as well?
Well, not omnipotent
separate and
God,
distinct.
but this highly advanced, and apparently according to this race of gods, they're the most powerful gods in the universe. But, as I stated before, I do believe there are other alien races, possibly living on other worlds that serve these Elohim. That's where it gets a little bit confusing, because the angels are not the gods.
No.
I believe the gods travel in these craft, but I believe for the most part what we are seeing are the angels, the Malach that are described, that serve the Elohim and seem to do the grunt work, as it were.
Well, let's talk about the Greek gods for just a moment, Patrick. Yes. To me, I could accept that thought, because the way they describe the Greek gods in Greek mythology, they seem extraterrestrial, and they are godlike, and they're different. Each one of them seems to have a different strength.
Right.
Zeus being the father god, basically,
right.
And then they have all these other offshoots.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me. You too?
Yes. It's just simply that the Bible does not describe the other gods that are mentioned. It doesn't speak to them.
No.
Why
not? Why not?
I don't know. I have no idea. It's not as detailed. It's more, if you'll notice, the entire Old Testament is mostly about the history of the Hebrews and their encounters with this God.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically a Hebrew-centric book. It's about the Hebrews. Now, the Bible was put together in 325 A.D. by the first theologian of the Catholic Church, known as Eusebius. He was a personal friend of the Emperor Constantine, who did the original Reformation of the Church that now has become what we know as the Christian Church. He put together a book of an Old Testament that he decided would be the Old Testament. It's believed that he took most of his things from Origen. He put these books together and printed 50 Bibles. Now, we have one of those 50 Bibles. It was just released about a year ago, I believe. And we have those Bibles. But those were not the only books that were used by the Hebrews. There were many other books. I have on my website, I deal in the lost books of the Bible as well. and I have on my website about 600 lost books, many of them linked. Now, we only accept, it's very hard. I don't have a staff or anything like that. So we have, myself and my editor have to read these books and have to vet them, make sure there's no contradictions with the other books, make sure that they are original. But if you take those books, if you just added the book of Enoch into the Bible, you would expand it would be more like some of the other religions. And if you added other books, we accept the Shepherd of Hermas, the book of Jasher, the book of Enoch, the book of Barnabas. There are a few that we have gone through. But generally, if the book was accepted by the Hebrews, and if it was prior to the 4th century A.D., we believe there's a good possibility that the book is valid. So, but the Bible is like a Reader's Digest of what is actually like picking up a Reader's Digest out of a library. That is not the whole library. There's so much more out there that we don't know about, and a lot have been lost. There are 28 other books that are described, they're quoted in the Bible, and I guess about half of those we have not been able to recover. They're just not there any longer. But there's a whole different, and when you read some of the things that are in these books, there's an experience. Enoch is a fascinating book. So there's a lot of other books out there that would make the Bible much broader and much different from the other religions, much broader and more in sync with the other religions around the world.
At any point in the Bible, do they talk directly about ETs or extraterrestrials, or is it all angelic and godlike?
Well, yes. They don't talk about other worlds. Jesus talked about having other flocks, which was interesting. But no, there's no. We have to understand. The thing is, it wasn't until 1877 when Vincent Schiaparelli, who was the chief astronomer in Milan, discovered the canals on Mars with his telescope. Now, what was amazing about that was that the word, when it was translated from the Italian, which it was originally, his report was originally written in, the word canale, C-A-N-A-L-E, was translated into the word canal. Now, canale means a gully. Canal is a constructed waterway. Therefore, when it came into the public, all of a sudden we have intelligent life on Mars. And then 20 years later, H.G. Wells wrote the book War of the Worlds, which presented the first alien invader concept and the concept of people from another world. So they had it in their mind about there might be a civilization on Mars, and then all of a sudden H.G. Wells comes out with this and puts it into a different perspective, of course, a fictional perspective, but nonetheless a perspective that has stuck with us. Prior to that time, for the thousands of years of written history, they were all called the gods, the sky people. It wasn't until the 16th century that the public really caught on to the fact that we even had planets in our solar system. So the concept of beings from other worlds didn't make any sense back then. It was they just came out of the sky, is all those people know. And that's what, and of course, now here's the thing that's very important. When I first started this research, I was studying the Great Pyramid, and I wanted to, most engineers that have studied this agree that there's one big problem, and that's the fact that all of these stones were quarried up to 600 miles away on the other side of the Nile River, which is a very shallow river.
You know, it's funny, too, that you say that, Patrick, because this week I had Zahi Hawass on the program, head of Egypt's Antiquities, and he contends all the stones came from right next to the pyramids.
Well, he's I don't agree with a lot of
you can't argue with Zahi. You got to listen and ask him questions and let him give his side of it, because you argue with him, you'll never get anywhere.
I know. I've watched him go. I've seen his specials and things like that. But I don't have a great deal of respect for him as the director of the Department of Antiquities in Egypt. But that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, the engineers could get everything. They could use all kinds of processes to get it from the quarries to one side of the Nile, and then once they got it over the Nile, they had these ramps and all these other ideas about how they would build it. But they all agreed that flight had to be used. And of course, at that time, I was considering that it was probably an alien race that had created it. Now, I didn't have any problems with that as a theologian because I figured these gods. I didn't have it in proper perspective, but I knew that if there were aliens out there, and this God that was in the Bible, he could have created them as well. There's no problem. I didn't have any problem with that. So I started studying flight in the Bible. Of course, flight happens in the sky. It's amazing that the word sky and skies in a Bible with 770,000 words, where almost everything happens outdoors, only has the word sky or skies 11 times. However, if you start looking at what the clouds and the birds and everything like that are in the sky, when you start looking those up, you're going to find that they're not in the sky, that they're in heaven. Now, as a theologian, I had never looked up. Heaven to me was the same concept that we always had, that the mainstream holds. So I looked up that word heaven. It only comes from two words in the entire Bible, from the word shamayim in the Old Testament in the Hebrew, which means the sky where the stars and the clouds are, and the word shamayin in the New Testament having exactly the same meaning. So everywhere where you see the word, and there's no description of this heavenly place. There is a description of a city that lands on the planet that has pearly gates, and that's where all that comes from. But there is it doesn't say you're going to go to heaven. It doesn't say that's where you're going to spend the rest of eternity. That's never said. If you take the word heaven and replace it with the word sky, the 730 times it's used in the Bible, it fits every time. Therefore, all these things, these clouds, these swift clouds, these glowing clouds, these pillars, these amazing chariots, these fiery chariots, the whirlwinds, all of these things were not happening in some other dimension, but they were happening in the sky in front of the people who were writing about them. And that's what they were describing.
Let's talk while we have a few moments, and then we'll carry into next hour, because I want to talk with you about why some UFOs have been depicted as being evil, the fallen angels, and some of those areas. But let's talk about the angels and the aliens. You brought up something pretty fascinating earlier, Patrick, and that is the possibility that these angels could be interpreted as these alien grays. Tell me a little bit more about that.
All right. Well, the description of angels in the Bible do not reflect what the mainstream thought is. Wikipedia, for instance, describes an angel as an ethereal being found in many religions whose duties are to assist and serve God. They typically act as messengers, as believed in the three main monotheistic religions. Now, mainstream thought believes that angels are described in the Bible as having bird-like wings, soft and beautiful features, everything like that. But about the only thing that seems to be true about the description of angels is about them flying in the clouds. All the rest bears no resemblance to truth. As far as we were able to determine, the standard image of how angels appears basically is based on the imagination of painters and sculptors who first created the images we see throughout history.
Point.
And we put heavy emphasis on the word imagination because no such descriptions are found anywhere in the Bible. What we do find is brilliant and sparkling, very terrible, warlike, and incredibly powerful angels. Some do appear as men, but there is nothing like the angelic images we see. The only description, as I said, we have of that is this little guy who was in the sepulcher. The others, Lot met some. Some have appeared, but there's no real descriptions. But also, the important thing is that almost every time they appear, they strike fear into the people that see them.
Which tells me that there could be some evil associated with them.
Not necessarily.
All right. Explain that when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. I'm George Norrie with our very special guest tonight, Patrick Cook. His website, and you should go look at it, is BibleUFO.com. With our very special guest tonight, Patrick Cook, as we talk about his theories about visitation on this planet. More in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Okay, Patrick, let's talk about angels and then some of these potential evil UFOs and fallen angels. Are they two different categories, the angels that we're talking about and fallen angels?
Well, originally I believe they were the original ones that we are discussing. The concept of fallen angels as portrayed by many theorists is covered in my research on the website in a section called Fallen Angels and UFOs, a Maze of Misconception. It's very complicated, but it's very easy to understand. In a nutshell, it all goes back to the Great Flood in Genesis 6, where we find this strange event. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose.